Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in last week for my mental health awareness myths. Today I'm going to be talking about the self-harm mythbusters. Like last week I was doing mental health one, and this time is self-harm. So I will be going on in future videos to do more on the mental health topic, but today I'm just focusing solely on self-harm. So keep watching if you'd like to find out. Myth 1, self-harm is only used as a coping mechanism by emo people. Now, firstly, that is not true at all. And secondly, I think it's quite hard to class someone as emo. Like, I know what people mean when they do that, but a lot of people that self-harm aren't emo at all and aren't from that sort of social group that people are thinking about. Self-harm can affect anyone from any background. They can be black, white, oriental, rich, poor. It doesn't focus solely on one group. 1 in 3 teens self-harm, which is so high, and that can't be just from one social group, and that myth is ridiculous. Like, people always think like, oh, like they always take the myth and they're like, oh, like that person like is an emo, like, you know, they cut themselves, blah, blah, blah. Someone doesn't have to wear black or have their hair all over their face or only listen to depressing music to be a self-harmer. And a lot of people that do like those things and yeah, listen to different types of music aren't necessarily self-harmers. Like, we need to get rid of that stigma that that is the only people that self-harm. Myth number 2, if someone self-harms, they must be suicidal. Right, someone who self-harms is usually using it as a coping mechanism. They are not using it to try and kill themselves. That's not what they're trying to do. Usually they're probably trying to avoid suicide, like avoid it completely. Someone might be suicidal and might self-harm, and those things don't always necessarily not come hand in hand, but they don't always necessarily do. Like, if someone is trying their absolute hardest to deal with something that's going on in their life, if they're feeling like there's too much pressure on them at school, or family life is hard, or their friendship group is breaking up and they just can't deal with it, they are more likely to result to something like self-harm, which is sort of a temporary fix for that person, rather than just think, oh yeah, I'm going to kill myself, because that is a bit drastic and the human mind doesn't normally work like that. Obviously for some people it might do, but for people that have actually got something going on and they're trying to deal with it, this is what they'll go to, rather than just thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to kill myself. It doesn't quite work like that. As I said, it is a coping mechanism and they're using it to try and deal with the stuff, rather than just, oh my gosh, let's just forget about it all and just end it. It doesn't work like that, not at all, not one bit. Number 3, the more serious the injury, the more serious the problem. Oh, why? If someone has a huge wound on their arm, that is an issue. And if someone has a cluster of small wounds on their ankle, that is exactly the same severity. We cannot keep thinking, oh, you know, it's not really bad enough for us to do anything about it. I mean, you know, it's only small, it doesn't really matter. Self-harm is self-harm, whatever way you look at it. Like, it's not at all dependent on how badly someone self-harms. It doesn't matter if they've got, you know, red marks on their arms or like legs, or it just doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. And the one thing we need to get rid of is thinking, oh well, you know, if they were actually a self-harmer, then they'd actually have big wounds. No, it doesn't work like that, not at all. Myth number 4, cutting is the only form of self-harm. Now, understandably, I understand why this one is misconceived as a fact sometimes. I think in society and in like the media, even like on TV programs and on films, if someone is portrayed to be a self-harmer or is acting in the role as a self-harmer, normally it's really bad, but they will cut, they won't, like, the media doesn't really portray any other forms of self-harming. There is so many, there's like burning, scratching, hair pulling, like swallowing things, or like taking lethal amounts of things that aren't good for you, obviously. Like, it's self-harm, it's not cutting, it's not one thing. Like, if that person wants to harm themselves, then they will in a way that they think is most effective to them. Like, they're not just going to think, oh, maybe I'll cut, maybe, like, it might be, you know, and some, obviously, people that do self-harm, that is the only method of self-harm that they will know, so that is how it's probably come across to them, and that's probably why, or maybe one of the reasons that they do use that form of self-harm. But that is not the only form, not at all. Like, I think we should get rid of that and think, actually, you know, maybe that's not supposed to be there, or maybe that mark's not supposed to be there, or maybe, you know, that person's like just not, the things on their body or the marks on their body, or they're losing hair, like, it shouldn't happen and it shouldn't be there. And that's when we need to think, oh, maybe that is self-harm. And if someone does come to you and say, I've been pulling my hair out, you shouldn't think, why have you done that, like, why? You should think, right, that's self-harm. And I think if there was more awareness around the topic of actual a range of self-harm mechanisms, we wouldn't have that. But I understand why that is, like, seen as it is, but we need to get rid of that, definitely, and think, no, there's other methods. There is, like, we need to educate ourselves and know that there are other methods of self-harm. Number 5, everyone that self-harms is doing it for attention. I don't even know what to say to that one. The amount of times I've heard that just used in actual conversation that isn't even like a deep conversation, that is just in passing. Oh, that person cuts, or like they're just attention seeking, like they just want the attention. Okay, if someone self-harms, whether that is for attention or whether that is for like a different reason, that is a problem in itself. I've heard before people say, oh, is it selfish that I self-harm because I want people to see? Like, I want people to notice my cuts or my burns, or, you know. No, it's not selfish. That is a problem. It's sad that that person has to go through that and has to think that that is the only way to get attention. And the problem behind that is the bigger problem than it is that the actual fact that they're doing it. And as I said before, not everyone who self-harms is suicidal, and this is a coping mechanism. If that person cannot cope, like, and they are not getting enough attention, and people say that they're attention seeking, it's probably because they need that attention. Just because someone gets out their cuts, yeah, that's another one. Just because someone gets out their cuts or gets out their scars does not mean they want your attention. People who are recovered, I myself am recovered from self-harm. I don't feel anything by wearing short sleeves. As you can see, I don't think anything by it. That's not me saying, oh yeah, look at them. Like, I'm recovered and I am a healthy, happy person. Like, it doesn't mean that just because someone gets out their scars or their cuts or their burns or anything that they're meaning to try and grab your attention. But if someone is doing it for that reason, they need that attention and they need that help. And last but not least, number 6, if we get rid of that person self-harming, then the problems will be gone. No, it doesn't happen like that. If someone is self-harming, they are self-harming for a reason. Like, they're not just doing it to do it, because that is just a shallow, like, it doesn't work. Someone is self-harming because of emotions that they can't control in a healthy way, which is caused by environmental factors that they might be living with, or they might be going to school with, or they might be, you know, doing something else with. Like, something is happening to make them feel certain emotions that are making them feel like they can't handle them and making them self-harm. Self-harm in itself is not the problem. Even if that person was I don't know, even if they weren't dealing with an unhealthy way, yes, that is part of the problem, but that problem needs to be solved. Say if that person was self-harming because they feel so inadequate that they haven't got any friends, or their family life is rubbish, like, that's the problem. The self-harm is not the problem, and we need to deal with that rather than thinking, oh, it's just on the surface, that's fine. Yeah, like, that's not the thing that we, obviously that is something that you need to deal with, because that can lead to all sorts of problems like infections and long-lasting bodily damage and stuff like that, but you need to deal with the problem before it, and then you can deal with the actual action. So that is it. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, share and subscribe, comment any ideas you want me to talk about in the future. In the meantime, you can read my blog, so check that out. But yeah, tune in later this week for another video on a different mental health awareness topic. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.